Admiral Kane Morrison stood at the main window of Earth Defense Command and watched the stars change. One moment the space around Earth looked normal and peaceful. The next moment 3,000 alien ships appeared like ghosts becoming real. Each ship was huge, bigger than the largest city on Earth. They came out of nowhere and filled the darkness with their cold metal shapes. Kane had been waiting for this day his whole life, but seeing it happen still made his heart beat fast. The alien ships moved in perfect lines like they had done this many times before. Their hulls were dark gray and covered with weapons that could destroy planets. Strange lights blinked along their sides in patterns that hurt to look at. These were not ships built for exploration or peace. These were warships built only to kill and conquer. Behind Kane, the control room buzzed with activity as his officers worked at their stations. Nobody spoke above a whisper because everyone knew what was happening. The biggest alien army in known history had just arrived to take over Earth. Commander Lisa Hayes walked up to Kane and handed him a data pad. Her face was calm, but Kane could see the worry in her eyes. The pad showed numbers that made Kane feel sick. 3,000 ships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. The aliens had enough weapons to destroy Earth 100 times over. Lisa had been working as Earth's head tactical officer for 15 years. She knew more about alien warfare than anyone else on the planet. If Lisa was worried, then everyone should be scared. Captain Ben Tucker came over from the weapons station. Ben was tall and thin with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent the last 10 years working on secret projects that most people never heard about. When Ben spoke, his voice was steady and sure. He told Kane that all defense systems were ready and waiting for orders. Dr. Maria Santos joined them at the window. Maria was Earth's best scientist, and she had been working on something special for many years. She looked at the alien ships through the thick glass and nodded slowly. Maria had dark hair and wore glasses that made her look very smart. She told the others that everything was going according to plan. Kane did not understand what plan she meant, but he trusted Maria completely. The first alien message came exactly 1 hour after the ships arrived. A face appeared on the main screen that looked almost human, but not quite right. The alien had purple skin and yellow eyes that glowed in the dark. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. The alien said its name was Emperor Vexthal, and it ruled the Zephyrian Empire. The Emperor told Earth that his people had conquered 47 different worlds. He showed pictures of burning cities and empty planets where nothing lived anymore. The Emperor said that resistance was useless because no one had ever defeated the Zephyrian fleet. He gave Earth 1 day to surrender completely or face total destruction. The message ended with the Emperor laughing in a way that made everyone in the room feel cold. Kane looked around at his officers and saw fear on some faces but determination on others. Lisa started reading reports from other Earth defense stations. The reports all said the same thing. The alien ships were too many and too powerful. Earth's normal weapons would not be enough to stop them. Captain Steve Parker, who ran the space monitoring station, said the aliens were already sending smaller ships toward Earth. These scout ships were checking Earth's defenses and looking for the best places to attack. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Miller called from the lunar base and said his sensors showed more alien ships still arriving. The enemy fleet was getting bigger every hour. But Kane knew something the aliens did not know. For 50 years, Earth had been preparing for exactly this moment. Not with bigger guns or stronger shields, but with something completely different. Something the aliens would never expect because they thought like conquerors instead of thinking like humans. Dr. Santos stepped closer to Kane and whispered that the secret project was ready. All the hidden equipment was working perfectly and waiting for the right moment. Kane nodded and told her to begin the final preparations. Engineer Tony Garcia, who was working at a computer station across the room, gave them a thumbs-up sign. Tony had helped build the secret weapon and he knew it would work. Captain Rachel Wright called from Mars and said her teams were in position. Lieutenant Kevin Ross confirmed that all the hidden stations were connected and ready. Communications officer Zara Chen monitored the alien radio signals and reported that the enemies were confident they would win easily. The aliens were already making plans about what to do with Earth after they conquered it. They talked about which cities to destroy first and how many humans to keep as slaves. The Emperor sent another message 2 hours later. This time he was standing in front of a huge window that showed the Earth floating in space like a blue and white ball. The Emperor said he thought Earth was a pretty planet, and it would make a nice addition to his empire. He promised that some humans would be allowed to live if they served the Zephyrians faithfully. The Emperor also said he had heard that humans were good at building things so they would be useful as workers. Kane felt anger growing in his chest as he listened to the alien talk about his home and his people, like they were already defeated. But Kane also felt something else growing inside him. It was the feeling of a trap about to close. The aliens thought they were the hunters, but they were actually walking into the biggest surprise in galactic history. As night fell over Earth Defense Command, Kane gathered his senior officers around the tactical table. The holographic display showed the positions of all the alien ships. They were moving closer to Earth in a pattern that would surround the planet completely. In 6 hours, they would be close enough to begin their attack. Kane looked at each of his officers and saw that they were ready. Lisa had her battle plans prepared. Ben had his weapons systems armed and waiting. Maria had her secret project charged and targeted. Jake had his support team standing by. Everyone knew their job and everyone trusted the plan. Kane took a deep breath and gave the order that would change everything. The trap that humanity had spent decades building was about to spring shut on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Dr. Maria Santos walked through the underground tunnels beneath Earth Defense Command and remembered the day everything changed. 50 years ago, her grandfather, Dr. Carlos Santos, had been working late in his laboratory when he discovered something amazing. Carlos had been studying the smallest parts of matter called atoms and how they stuck together to make everything in the universe. Most scientists thought atoms were too small and too stable to be used as weapons. But Carlos was different from other scientists because he thought about problems in ways that nobody else considered. That night, Carlos was running tests on quantum tunneling, which was a strange effect where tiny particles could pass through solid barriers. He was trying to make the effect stronger when something unexpected happened. The machine he was using started making all the metal in the room vibrate at the same frequency. The vibration got stronger and stronger until a steel wrench on his desk simply fell apart into powder. Carlos realized he had found a way to make the tiny particles that held matter together stop working properly. Maria opened the door to the secret laboratory that her grandfather had built so many years ago. The room was huge and filled with machines that most people would not understand. In the center stood the first quantum disruption generator that Carlos had built with his own hands. The machine looked like a giant metal ring covered with thousands of small crystals that glowed with blue light. Maria walked up to the control panel and began checking the readings. Everything was working perfectly, just like it had been for 50 years. The quantum field was stable and ready to be activated across the entire solar system. Maria remembered growing up in this laboratory and learning from her grandfather how the machines worked. Carlos had taught her that other alien species were very smart, but they all thought about science in the same ways. They built bigger guns and stronger shields, but they never thought about changing the basic rules that made matter stick together. Humans were different because human brains worked in strange and creative ways that surprised everyone, including other humans. The secret project had taken 50 years to complete because it required hiding equipment all across the solar system. Inside the moon were 12 huge quantum generators built to look like mining equipment. On Mars were 8 more generators disguised as research stations. Even some asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with the special machines. Every piece of equipment was connected through quantum entanglement, which meant they could all work together instantly no matter how far apart they were. Maria pressed a button and contacted Captain Rachel Wright, who was stationed on Mars. Rachel appeared on the video screen wearing her red Mars defense uniform. Rachel had been born on Mars and spent her whole life maintaining the secret equipment there. She reported that all 8 Mars generators were fully charged and ready for activation. The quantum field harmonics were perfectly synchronized with the Earth and Moon systems. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Miller called in from Luna Base, which was built inside the moon. Jake was a tough military man who had spent 20 years guarding the most important secret in human history. He confirmed that all 12 lunar generators were operating at maximum efficiency. The quantum disruption field could be activated at any moment and would cover a sphere of space 3 million kilometers across. Engineer Tony Garcia was working at the main control station and monitoring quantum field strength throughout the solar system. Tony had helped design the network of hidden generators and knew every detail of how they operated. He reported that quantum resonance was stable and all safety systems were functioning normally. The field was ready to destabilize the specific atomic structures found in Zephyrian ship hulls. Maria thought about how her grandfather had figured out the alien weakness. 20 years ago, Earth had found pieces of destroyed Zephyrian ships floating in space near other conquered worlds. Carlos had studied the alien metal and discovered it was made with atomic bonds that vibrated at very specific frequencies. The aliens had chosen these frequencies because they made their ships incredibly strong against normal weapons. But Carlos realized that if you could make those same frequencies resonate in the right way, the atomic bonds would break apart completely. Captain Ben Tucker arrived in the laboratory, carrying a data pad full of technical information. Ben had been working with Maria for 10 years to prepare the quantum weapon for actual use. He showed her the calculations that proved the system would work against the Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships were made from 17 different types of metal, and all of them would be affected by the quantum disruption field. Ben explained that the beauty of the weapon was its simplicity. There were no missiles to shoot down and no energy beams to block with shields. The quantum field would simply make the alien ships stop existing by taking apart their atoms one by one. Communications officer Zara Chen contacted the laboratory from the main command center. Zara had been monitoring alien communications and reported that the Zephyrians were completely confident about their victory. They were already discussing which Earth cities to destroy first and how to divide up the planet among their different commanders. The aliens had no idea that Earth possessed any advanced technology because humans had been very careful to hide their capabilities. Admiral Kane Morrison came down to the laboratory to check on the final preparations. Kane had known about the quantum weapon for 15 years, but he still found it hard to believe that such a simple idea could defeat the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Maria showed him the control system that would activate all the hidden generators simultaneously. One button press would create a quantum field that would make 3,000 alien warships simply disappear. Kane asked Maria if she was completely sure the weapon would work. Maria nodded and explained that they had tested the system on captured alien technology many times. Every test had been successful and the alien materials had been completely destroyed. The quantum disruption field worked by sending harmonic vibrations through space that matched the natural frequency of Zephyrian atomic bonds. When the vibrations reached the alien ships, the metal would begin to shake itself apart at the molecular level. Kane looked at the monitoring screens that showed the positions of all the alien ships. The Zephyrian fleet was moving closer to Earth and would be in optimal position for the quantum attack within 2 hours. Maria began the final activation sequence that would charge all the generators to maximum power. Around the solar system, hidden machines that had waited 50 years for this moment began to hum with deadly energy. The trap was almost ready to close on an empire that had never known defeat. Admiral Kane Morrison looked at the main tactical display and saw that the moment had finally arrived. The Zephyrian fleet was entering the invisible quantum field that surrounded Earth like a deadly trap. 3,000 massive alien warships moved forward in perfect formation, completely unaware that they were flying into the most advanced weapon humanity had ever created. Kane pressed the activation button at exactly 14:32, Earth Standard Time. In laboratories and hidden stations across the solar system, quantum generators hummed to life and began sending invisible waves of destruction through space. Dr. Maria Santos watched her control screens as the quantum disruption field reached full power in less than 3 seconds. The field was completely invisible and undetectable, but it filled millions of cubic kilometers of space around Earth with harmonized vibrations that would tear apart Zephyrian atomic bonds. Maria had spent 30 years of her life working toward this single moment, and now she could only watch and wait to see if her grandfather's discovery would save humanity. Emperor Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt very pleased with himself. In 1 hour, his fleet would begin bombarding Earth, and in 1 day, the planet would surrender completely. The Emperor had conquered 47 worlds using exactly the same tactics, and Earth would be no different from all the others. Vexthul was already planning which human cities to destroy first when something impossible happened to his fleet. At 14:32:07, the first Zephyrian dreadnought simply stopped existing. The massive warship that had been flying through space just a moment before was suddenly gone without any explosion or flash of light. 1 second there was a ship the size of a city, and the next second there was only empty space filled with a cloud of individual atoms. Vexthul stared at the spot where his ship had been and could not understand what he was seeing. The ship had not been destroyed by weapons or blown apart by explosives. It had just quietly disappeared as if it had never been real in the first place. Before the Emperor could give any orders or call for reports from his other commanders, more ships began vanishing in the same terrible way. The quantum disruption field was spreading through the alien fleet like an invisible disease that killed ships instead of people. Every Zephyrian vessel that entered the field zone immediately began to shake, as its atomic bonds started vibrating at frequencies that made solid matter fall apart. Captain Steve Parker monitored the destruction from Earth Defense Command and reported what he was seeing to Admiral Morrison. The alien ships were not burning or exploding. They were simply dissolving into their basic atomic components. The quantum field worked by making the metal in Zephyrian hulls vibrate so fast that the atoms could not stay connected to each other anymore. Each ship came apart in exactly the same way, starting with the outer hull and working inward until nothing remained except a thin cloud of scattered particles. Commander Lisa Hayes tracked the progress of the quantum field as it moved through the enemy formation. The field was invisible, but its effects were easy to see as ship after ship vanished from the tactical display. Lisa had studied alien warfare for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The most feared fleet in the galaxy was being destroyed without firing a single shot in its own defense. Communications officer Zara Chen listened to the panicked radio transmissions coming from the surviving Zephyrian ships. The alien commanders were screaming orders at each other and demanding explanations for what was happening to their fleet. Some aliens thought they were under attack by invisible weapons, while others believed they had flown into some kind of natural space phenomenon that destroyed matter. None of them understood that humans had built a trap specifically designed to kill Zephyrian technology. Emperor Vexthul watched his magnificent fleet disappear ship by ship and felt terror for the first time in his long life. The Emperor had built his empire on fear and overwhelming force, but now something was killing his ships faster than he could count them. Vexthul ordered his remaining vessels to retreat immediately, but many of them had already entered the quantum field zone and were beginning to shake apart. The Emperor's tactical officers reported that they were losing an average of 30 ships every 10 seconds. Engineer Tony Garcia monitored the quantum field strength from his control station and confirmed that all generators were working perfectly. The field was maintaining consistent power levels and would continue operating for several more hours if necessary. Tony had helped design the system to be completely automatic once activated, so that no human mistakes could interfere with its operation. The quantum disruption field covered such a huge area that the alien fleet could not escape by flying around it or jumping to hyperspace fast enough. Dr. Maria Santos watched the destruction through the laboratory's main viewing screen and felt amazed by how well her grandfather's invention was working. The quantum field was tearing apart alien ships exactly as predicted without causing any danger to Earth or human spacecraft. Maria had included safety protocols in the field design that prevented it from affecting human technology, which used different atomic bonding frequencies than Zephyrian materials. Captain Ben Tucker coordinated with defense stations throughout the solar system and received confirmation that the quantum weapon was performing flawlessly. All hidden generators were operating within normal parameters, and the field strength was remaining constant across the entire affected area. Ben had worried that some technical problem might interfere with the weapon during actual combat, but every system was working exactly as designed. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Miller called from Luna Base to report that his sensors were detecting massive amounts of free atoms where the alien fleet had been just minutes before. The quantum field was converting 3,000 warships into harmless clouds of basic matter that would eventually drift apart and disappear into space. Jake had spent 20 years guarding the secret of the quantum weapon, and now he was watching it save humanity from complete conquest. By 1433-30, almost the entire Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to scattered atoms floating in the darkness of space. Only Emperor Vexthul's flagship remained intact because it was protected by experimental shields made from materials that the quantum field could not affect. The Emperor's ship was desperately trying to escape while broadcasting warnings about humanity's impossible weapon to the rest of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Morrison watched the last alien ship fleeing toward the edge of the solar system and knew that everything had changed. In less than 90 seconds, humanity had destroyed the most powerful military force in galactic history, using a weapon that no other species had ever imagined possible. Admiral Kane Morrison watched Emperor Vexthul's flagship racing away from Earth at maximum speed and decided it was time to deliver humanity's message to the galaxy. Kane walked to the main communications station where Zara Chen was already preparing to open a channel to the fleeing alien ship. The Emperor's vessel was broadcasting desperate warnings to the rest of the Zephyrian Empire about Earth's impossible weapon, but Kane wanted to make sure the message was much more specific and much more terrifying. Zara opened the communication link and Emperor Vexthul's face appeared on the main screen, looking completely different than it had just 2 hours earlier. The proud conqueror who had demanded Earth's surrender was now a frightened alien whose yellow eyes were wide with panic and whose purple skin had turned pale with fear. Vexthul was shouting orders at his crew and trying to coordinate an emergency jump to hyperspace when he realized that humans were trying to contact him. Admiral Morrison began speaking in a calm and steady voice that carried across space to the Emperor's ship. Kane told Vexthul that humanity had been watching the Zephyrian Empire for 50 years and knew the location of every world, every military base, and every colony that belonged to the aliens. Earth had detailed maps of the entire Zephyrian territory and complete information about their technology, their weapons, and their weaknesses. The quantum disruption field that had just destroyed 3,000 warships could be deployed anywhere in the galaxy, with only a few hours' notice. Kane explained that human deep space probes had been secretly exploring Zephyrian space for 30 years, gathering intelligence and preparing for exactly this moment. The probes were small and undetectable, but they had mapped every important target in the alien empire. Humanity knew which worlds contained military factories, which planets held the largest populations, and which systems controlled the Empire's communications networks. Intelligence analyst Kevin Ross stepped forward and began reading from a datapad that contained information no alien had ever expected humans to possess. Kevin listed the names and locations of Zephyrian military commanders, described the defensive capabilities of their major worlds, and provided detailed analysis of their economic systems. The aliens had always believed that Earth was too primitive and too isolated to gather such intelligence, but human curiosity and determination had proven them completely wrong. Emperor Vexthul listened to the human officer reciting facts about his empire and felt his heart fill with cold dread. The humans knew things that only the highest-ranking Zephyrian officials were supposed to know. They had somehow penetrated the most secure systems in the galaxy and stolen secrets that could destroy the Empire from within. The Emperor realized that Earth had not been preparing to defend itself for 50 years, but had actually been preparing to destroy the Zephyrian Empire completely. Admiral Morrison continued speaking, and his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Kane told the Emperor that humanity's terms were simple and non-negotiable. The Zephyrian Empire would immediately withdraw from all conquered worlds and return them to their original inhabitants. Full reparations would be paid to every species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule. The Imperial war machine would be completely dismantled and all military vessels would be destroyed under human supervision. Any attempt to resist these demands would result in the systematic elimination of every Zephyrian military asset in the galaxy. Captain Nicole Davis, who commanded Earth's Liberation Fleet, reported that human ships were already en route to recently conquered systems. The Liberation Forces had been prepared and waiting for 30 years and could reach any Zephyrian world within days. Nicole explained that the Liberation Fleets carried quantum disruption generators and had orders to free every enslaved population in the galaxy. The humans were not interested in conquest or revenge, but they were absolutely determined to end the Zephyrian Empire's reign of terror forever. Dr. Maria Santos joined the communication from her laboratory and provided technical details that made Emperor Vexthul understand just how hopeless his situation had become. Maria explained that the quantum weapon could be modified to target any type of technology used by the Zephyrian military. Human scientists had analyzed captured alien equipment for decades and knew exactly how to destroy everything, from small fighters to massive space stations. The quantum field could be adjusted to different frequencies that would affect different materials, which meant that no Zephyrian technology would be safe anywhere in the galaxy. Communications Officer Zara Chen began broadcasting the human ultimatum on all Zephyrian military frequencies so that every alien commander would hear Earth's demands. The message was translated into 17 different languages used throughout the Empire and transmitted with enough power to reach every corner of Zephyrian space. Zara wanted to make sure that no alien officer could claim ignorance about humanity's terms or the consequences of refusing to comply with them. Emperor Vexthul tried to negotiate with Admiral Morrison and offered tribute technology and even vassalage in exchange for mercy. The Emperor promised that the Zephyrian Empire would never again threaten Earth or any other human world. Vexthul begged Morrison to spare the Zephyrian people and offered to surrender himself for trial and punishment. But Kane Morrison rejected every offer because humanity had already decided that the galaxy needed to be completely free from Zephyrian tyranny. Captain Ben Tucker displayed a holographic map showing the current positions of human liberation fleets throughout the galaxy. The fleets had been secretly deployed for months and were ready to begin freeing conquered worlds immediately. Ben explained that humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment and would not be satisfied with anything less than the complete liberation of every enslaved species. The human forces were equipped with quantum weapons and had detailed battle plans for attacking every major Zephyrian stronghold. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Miller contacted the communication from Luna Base and provided Emperor Vexthul with a demonstration of humanity's reach and capabilities. Jake activated a small quantum field generator that had been hidden on one of the moons orbiting the Zephyrian homeworld for 15 years. The generator destroyed an unmanned Zephyrian patrol ship in the Emperor's home system, proving that Earth could strike anywhere at any time. The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity had been preparing for this war much longer and much more thoroughly than anyone had imagined. As news of the impossible human victory began spreading across galactic communication networks, 47 enslaved species started broadcasting messages of hope and rebellion. The species that everyone had thought were permanently conquered began organizing resistance movements and preparing to reclaim their freedom. The galaxy's newest military power had just announced its intention to liberate every world that the Zephyrian Empire had ever touched, and aliens everywhere began to believe that freedom might actually be possible. 6 months after the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet, Ambassador Carol Thompson stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. The Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Kepler Station had been built 300 years earlier when the galaxy was young and full of hope for peaceful cooperation between different species. For centuries, the hall had been empty because the Zephyrian Empire had made such meetings impossible. Now representatives from over 200 worlds filled the ancient chamber and listened as Carol explained humanity's vision for a free galaxy. Carol had been chosen as Earth's chief diplomat because she understood that winning a war was much easier than building lasting peace. She spoke in clear, simple words that translator machines could easily convert into dozens of different languages. Carol told the assembled aliens that humanity had not destroyed the Zephyrian Empire in order to replace it with another human empire. Earth wanted every species to be free to govern itself and develop its own culture, without interference from conquerors or overlords. The quantum disruption technology that had defeated the Zephyrians would be shared freely with any species that promised to use it only for defense and never for conquest. Dr. Maria Santos sat in the scientific section of the assembly hall surrounded by alien researchers who wanted to learn about quantum field manipulation. Maria had spent the last 6 months traveling to different worlds and teaching their scientists how to build their own quantum generators. The technology was surprisingly easy to manufacture once you understood the basic principles, but it required a particular kind of creative thinking that many species found difficult. Maria discovered that each alien race approached the science differently based on how their brains worked and what their cultures valued most. The Andromedans, who were logical and precise, built quantum generators that were incredibly efficient, but took months to construct. The Centaurians, who loved beauty and art, created generators that looked like sculptures and sang musical notes while they operated. The Vegan refugees, who had survived Zephyrian conquest, built their generators inside asteroids and powered them with solar collectors that could operate for thousands of years without maintenance. Captain Nicole Davis reported to the assembly about the liberation operations that had freed 47 conquered worlds in just 6 months. Nicole had commanded the largest rescue mission in galactic history and helped billions of enslaved beings return to their home planets. Many of the liberated worlds had been under Zephyrian control for so long that entire generations had grown up knowing only slavery and oppression. The liberation forces had to provide not just military protection, but also food, medical care, and education to help former slaves learn how to live as free beings again. Some of the rescued species had lost their original languages and cultures during centuries of Zephyrian rule. Human anthropologists and historians worked with alien survivors to recover lost knowledge and rebuild traditional ways of life. The work was slow and difficult but incredibly rewarding as ancient songs were remembered, ancient customs were restored, and ancient technologies were rediscovered. Nicole explained that every liberated world was given the choice of joining the new Galactic Defense Alliance or remaining completely independent as long as they promised never to attack other species. General Peter Clark, who had overseen the peaceful transition of former Zephyrian territories, described how challenging it had been to prevent revenge and chaos in the aftermath of liberation. Many newly freed species wanted to punish their former oppressors, and some alien groups began fighting each other over territory and resources that had been stolen during the conquest period. Human peacekeeping forces had to intervene carefully to stop violence without imposing their own rule on other species. Peter explained that the key to successful peacekeeping was teaching different alien groups how to solve their problems through negotiation and compromise instead of warfare. Former Emperor Vex Thul sat in a special section of the assembly hall reserved for war criminals who were testifying about Zephyrian crimes against the galaxy. The once mighty ruler now looked old and broken as he answered questions about the Empire's methods of conquest and control. Vex Thul had agreed to cooperate with the War Crimes Tribunal in exchange for his life and the lives of other Zephyrian civilians who had not participated in military operations. The former emperor provided detailed information about hidden Zephyrian bases, secret weapons programs, and the locations of mass graves on conquered worlds. His testimony helped the liberation forces find and rescue thousands of prisoners who had been forgotten in remote detention facilities. Vex Thul also revealed the names of Zephyrian collaborators on different worlds and explained how the Empire had used local traders to maintain control over enslaved populations. Intelligence analyst Kevin Ross presented evidence showing how thoroughly humanity had penetrated Zephyrian society before the war began. Human agents had been working undercover throughout the Empire for decades, gathering information and preparing for the eventual liberation campaign. Kevin explained that the intelligence operation had been possible because humans looked enough like other species to blend in with alien populations when they wore simple disguises. The most successful human spies had been those who learned to think and act like the aliens they were impersonating. Many human agents had spent years living among enslaved populations and had developed deep friendships with aliens who never suspected their true identity. These relationships had provided invaluable intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses and had helped the liberation forces plan their operations down to the smallest details. Dr. Maria Santos announced that quantum disruption technology was being adapted for peaceful purposes that would benefit every species in the galaxy. The same principles that had destroyed Zephyrian warships could be used to break down radioactive waste into harmless elements, clean up polluted environments, and even terraform dead planets into living worlds. Human scientists were working with alien researchers to develop quantum medical devices that could repair damaged tissue at the cellular level, and quantum manufacturing systems that could create any needed material from basic atomic components. Ambassador Thompson concluded her address by reading the charter of the new Galactic Defense Alliance, which had been signed by representatives from 138 different worlds. The alliance was based on principles that every species had the right to exist freely, without fear of conquest or oppression. Member worlds promised to share defensive technology to help each other in times of crisis and to resolve disputes through peaceful negotiation rather than warfare. The alliance would maintain quantum disruption fields around important systems to prevent any future empire from threatening galactic peace. As the assembly session ended and representatives from different worlds began talking with each other about trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint scientific projects, Carol Thompson felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. Earth had proven that the smallest and newest species in the galaxy could make the biggest difference when they combined courage, determination, and creative thinking in ways that surprised everyone, including themselves.